Who is my neighbor? It's the central question of this gospel that we just heard. Who is my neighbor? And you know, at the end of this election week, I will preach at some point closer to the inauguration about the church's teaching on the government and public authorities. But I guess I can say at this point, whether you're happy or disappointed or indifferent to the results of this election week, one of my takeaways from this entire election cycle can be summed up in this question: who is my neighbor? And Jesus gives the answer in this parable of the Good Samaritan. We know the story, right? A man gets beat up on the road, and a priest and a Levite, his countrymen, same religion as him, pass him by. Likely because in Judaism, the contact with blood would make them ritually unable to participate in any of their prayer services for a period of time. And so they didn't want the disruption to their plans and to their schedule. As I think about my own busy life, I think about who I pass by every day, who my neighbor is in need that I neglect because I don't want to disrupt my own plans and my own schedule. We know that the Samaritans and the Jews had serious religious and cultural differences. We see that in the gospel that we read after Pascha of the Samaritan woman, right? Jesus speaks to this woman, and immediately she starts in with religious differences, right? Oh, you people worship a temple, we worship on the mountain, right? And so there was definitely conflict and difference there. And I imagine, although it doesn't say so in the gospel, that the Good Samaritan didn't change any of his views by helping this man who was from a different culture and different religion. Showing mercy and love does not mean that you have to agree with the person. In the first letter of St. John, the apostle says, "How can you say that you love God whom you can't see, and fail to love your neighbor whom you can see?" The whole gospel is a dialogue, right? And that dialogue began as a legal question. A lawyer came to Jesus and said, "What do I have to do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus elicits a legal answer from him, right? He quotes the law. But the God who emptied himself and came among us and suffered on the cross and died and rose on the third day calls us to do better than just the bare minimum or just what we have to do. Every time we make the sign of the cross, we're making a contract that we will do what Jesus has called us to do. At least we'll try. We've celebrated, it's been a baptism weekend. We had baptism last night, and we have Elsie Ann now newly baptized this morning. And I love baptisms. One of my favorite things to do. Because it always brings home to me my own baptism, although I don't remember it. But that we are baptized in the death and the resurrection of Christ. We die to our old self, we rise to our new self. And part of that new life is being called to love God with everything we have and love our neighbor as ourselves. And by this, we will be judged. I've said to you before that the Gospel of Luke often provides comparisons, right? Luke loves to take one set of actions and choices and compare them to another. So last Sunday we had the rich man and Lazarus. We begin the season of Great Lent in a couple of months with the Pharisee and the publican, and then the prodigal son and the older son. And this Sunday, we have the comparison of what the choices and the actions of the priest and the Levite on the one hand, and the Good Samaritan on the other hand. And I think it's worth pondering which one of those two we more resemble. as we are daily confronted with the question, who is my neighbor?